Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. Liam Carter's world was built on three principles: grit, loyalty, and the unforgiving ocean. At 42, his hands told a story of 15 years spent on oil rigs. Each scar was a permanent record of survival in a treacherous field. The pay was great, the isolation was a necessity, and the work was a distraction from his broken marriage. 3 years ago, his 12-year marriage to Elena Shaw ended in a brutal betrayal that made him question his sense of trust. She had been having an affair with a smooth-talking construction foreman named Marcus Thorne, a man with a history of domestic violence that Liam discovered too late. The divorce was swift and devastating. Elena took half of everything he had earned on the rigs, along with custody of their 15-year-old son, Jack Carter. Liam tried to stay in his son's life, but Elena poisoned every conversation. She moved Marcus into Liam's old house within weeks of the divorce, parading her new relationship like a flag of victory. Liam poured his fury into his work, taking on the riskiest, highest-paying contracts available. The isolation was a good fit, keeping him from doing something he might regret. Marcus Thorne was everything Liam hated. He was a man who used his fists to solve problems and his charm to manipulate women. At 38, Marcus had bounced between construction jobs, leaving a trail of ruined relationships and police reports. He had a particular knack for intimidating teenagers and had once terrorized his previous girlfriend's kids until they feared coming home. When he moved in with Elena, he immediately began asserting his control over Jack. The boy was tall for his age but lanky and awkward, and he became Marcus's favorite target for psychological warfare. Marcus demanded a respect he hadn't earned, a compliance he didn't deserve, and a submission that went against everything Liam had taught his son. The call came late on a Tuesday, North Sea time. Liam was in his bunk after a 16-hour shift when his satellite phone rang. Jack's voice, choked with tears and fear, pierced through the static. "Dad, I need you to come home." "Marcus, he broke my leg." Jack recounted Marcus's taunts. "This is what happens when your weak father is out of town," Jack continued, his voice breaking. "Dad, I told him I'd never call him Dad. He just snapped. My mother was here, Dad. She just watched. She said I provoked him by being disrespectful. Dad, I can't stay here anymore." The line went dead. Liam sat in his bunk, frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. The rig groaned around him, swaying with the waves, but he felt perfectly still. The silence before an earthquake. For 3 years, he had kept his rage in check, believing that distance was the answer. That belief was gone now. He reached into his gear bag and pulled out a small black notebook. It contained addresses and numbers he had collected over the years from men who'd found themselves in impossible situations. Men who solved problems that couldn't be handled by the law. Men who understood that sometimes justice requires you to get your hands dirty. He stopped at one number: Gabriel Diaz, a former Special Forces operator who now worked as a security consultant for oil companies. Gabriel had once mentioned over a late-night conversation that he knew people who specialized in permanent solutions for permanent problems. Liam had never thought he'd need to use that number. He was thinking about it now. Liam walked off the drill floor at 3 a.m. His supervisor shouted questions that he ignored. The North Sea wind whipped across the platform as Liam pulled out his satellite phone and dialed Marcus's number. A number he had memorized but never called. Marcus answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep and alcohol. "Who the hell is this?" "It's Liam Carter. I believe you know my son." There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice, gaining a cruel confidence, said, "Your boy learned some manners tonight. Maybe if you'd been here to teach him respect instead of hiding on your oil rig, this wouldn't have happened." Liam's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm going to say this once, Marcus. Stay away from my son." Marcus laughed, a sound like glass shattering. "Or what? You're in the middle of the ocean, Liam. Your boy is here with us, and he's learning what a real man looks like. Maybe next time he'll think twice before running his mouth." "Marcus," Liam said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was more menacing than any shout, "I want you to listen very carefully. I'm not just coming home. I'm bringing help. The kind of help that makes problems disappear forever. If you're smart, and I suspect you're not, you'll take Jack to the hospital and leave town." "Are you threatening me, rig pig?" Marcus's voice was full of bravado, but Liam heard the slight tremor underneath. "No, Marcus," Liam said. "I'm making you a promise." Liam ended the call and immediately dialed Gabriel Diaz. Gabriel picked up on the first ring as if he had been expecting the call. "Liam, what's the situation?" "My boy's ex-wife's boyfriend broke his leg because he wouldn't call him Dad. I need an immediate extraction from the rig, and I need backup to make sure this never happens again." "Copy that. I can have a helicopter at your position in 6 hours. As for backup," Gabriel paused. "How permanent are we talking?" Liam looked out at the dark North Sea, thinking of Jack's broken voice, Elena's betrayal, and Marcus's laughter. Permanent enough that they understand actions have consequences. Roger, I'll bring along Ben Davies, former Delta Force. He's good with close protection and problem resolution. We'll work out the details en route. Gabriel, Liam said, this isn't just about my son anymore. This is about sending a message to anyone who thinks they can take advantage of my family. Understood. See you in 6 hours. Liam spent the next 6 hours planning. He had built a fortune from his oil work, money that Elena didn't know about, stored in offshore accounts and shell companies. This wasn't about money, though. It was about respect, fear, and a kind of justice that a courtroom couldn't deliver. When the helicopter touched down on the rig's helipad, Liam was ready. He carried a single bag with clothes, documents, and a significant amount of cash. Gabriel Diaz stepped out first, a compact man with the eyes of someone who had seen too much and forgotten nothing. Behind him was Ben Davies, tall and silent, with the fluid movements of a predator. Liam, Gabriel said, extending his hand. Ben, meet Liam Carter. Ben specializes in psychological operations and conflict resolution. Ben's handshake was firm, his gaze appraising. Gabriel briefed me on the flight. We're going to make this right. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying them toward shore, a calm settled over Liam that he hadn't felt in years. For too long, he had been reactive, letting others dictate the terms of his life. Elena had taken his home, his money, and his son. Marcus had terrorized Jack and challenged Liam's authority. That was over now. What's the plan? Ben asked over the roar of the helicopter. Liam smiled, a chilling expression that made both operators exchange glances. First, we get my son and get him medical attention. Then, we teach Marcus Thorne and my ex-wife about consequences, but not in a way they'll expect. Meaning we don't just hurt them. We destroy everything they've built, everyone they care about, and every sense of security they've ever had. When we're done, they'll spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, knowing that crossing Liam Carter was the worst mistake they ever made. Gabriel nodded in approval. I like it. It's comprehensive. One more thing, Liam said, his voice carrying over the engine noise. This isn't temporary. This isn't something they recover from. I want them to understand that some actions create enemies for life. The helicopter touched down at a private airfield outside Aberdeen at dawn. Liam's first stop was a secure storage unit where he kept equipment for situations like this, situations he had hoped would never happen. Inside Unit 47 were waterproof cases containing items most people never knew existed. Surveillance equipment, untraceable communication devices, and documentation that could create or erase identities. Impressive setup, Ben observed, watching Liam check each piece of equipment. You've been preparing for something like this. In my line of work, you learn that violence is always a possibility, Liam replied, loading a case of micro cameras into a duffel bag. The smart thing to do is to be prepared for it. Gabriel studied a tablet showing real-time surveillance footage of Liam's old house. Your boy's still inside. Hospital records show Marcus took him to the ER around midnight. He claimed it was a soccer injury. The kid got a cast and crutches. Liam's jaw tightened. A soccer injury? The interesting part, Gabriel continued, is that Marcus has been making calls all morning. Seems your conversation spooked him more than he let on. He's reaching out to some interesting contacts. Ben looked up from the case he was inventorying. What kind of contacts? Marcus has ties to the Pinter family. Bradley Pinter runs a small-time operation out of the construction unions, mostly loan sharking and intimidation, but they have a reputation for escalating things. Liam processed this information with the same methodical precision that had kept him alive on dozens of oil rigs. He's calling in backup. That's what it looks like, Gabriel confirmed. Bradley Pinter has 2 brothers, Alex and Victor. They handle the family's enforcement. Good, Liam said, surprising both operators. I was wondering how to draw them all out at once. The drive to Liam's old neighborhood took 40 minutes. Liam sat in the passenger seat of Gabriel's Range Rover, watching familiar landmarks pass by. The school where Jack played baseball, the park where Liam had taught him to ride a bike, the restaurant where he had proposed to Elena 15 years ago. All of it felt like archaeological evidence of a life he had once lived. Target acquired, Ben said from the back seat, watching the house through high-powered binoculars. Your ex-wife just left in a blue Honda. The kid's visible in the front window. He's on the couch with his leg elevated. Liam's heart ached at the sight of his son. Even from a distance, Jack looked smaller, more fragile than he remembered. The cast extended from his ankle to his knee. Marcus is still inside, Gabriel noted. He's pacing and making phone calls. His body language suggests he's agitated. He should be, Liam said. Where's the surveillance van? Gabriel checked his watch. Leo Shaw should be in position now. Leo was Gabriel's technology specialist, a former NSA analyst who had left government service after growing disillusioned with bureaucratic limitations. He now provided technical support for private operations, specializing in electronic surveillance and digital manipulation. Liam's phone buzzed with a text from Leo. Audio video established. Recording everything. Marcus's next call is to Bradley Pinter. Meeting set for 6 p.m. at Sanchez Construction Yard. Perfect, Liam said. That gives us 8 hours to prepare the welcome party. Gabriel turned to face Liam. What exactly are you planning? Liam's expression was calm, but his eyes held a coldness that made even the experienced operators uncomfortable. Marcus thinks he's calling in reinforcements. What he's actually doing is gathering all my targets in one location. And then we remind them that some people shouldn't be threatened. Ben leaned forward. Liam, I need to ask, how far are you willing to take this? Liam was quiet for a long moment, watching his son through the window. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Ben, 3 years ago, I discovered my wife had been cheating on me with a man who beats children. I gave her half of everything I'd earned and walked away because I believe in doing the right thing. Last night, that same man broke my son's leg for refusing to call him dad. And my ex-wife watched it happen. He turned to face both men. I'm taking this as far as it needs to go. All the way to the end. Gabriel nodded slowly. Understood. But we do this smart. No collateral damage, no evidence, no complications. Agreed, Liam said. But when we're done, Marcus Thorne and the Pinter family are going to wish they never heard my name. The Range Rover pulled away from the curb. Liam didn't look back. The next time he saw his son, it would be as a father who had proven that some lines should never be crossed. The war was about to begin. The Sanchez Construction Yard sat on the industrial outskirts of town, a sprawling complex of warehouses and equipment surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. It was the perfect spot for a private meeting and the perfect location for an ambush. Liam studied the layout from Leo Abbott's surveillance van, which was parked 3 blocks away behind an abandoned gas station. Through multiple camera feeds, he watched Marcus Thorne pace nervously near the main warehouse. The Pinter brothers arrived in a black pickup truck. Bradley Pinter was the first to step out, a thick-set man in his 40s with scarred knuckles from decades of settling disputes with violence. His brothers, Alex and Victor, flanked him, both with the easy confidence of men who had never met a problem they couldn't intimidate into submission. Audio's clear, Leo reported, adjusting his equipment. They're discussing how to handle the oil rig cowboy. Liam listened through noise-canceling headphones as Marcus described his conversation with Liam, his voice gaining bravado as he described the perceived threat. The guy thinks he can scare me from the middle of the ocean, Marcus said. Let's show him what happens when you threaten the wrong people. Bradley Pinter let out a harsh laugh that echoed off the warehouse walls. Marcus, you called the right crew. We've been handling tough guys for 20 years. Your oil worker is about to learn that threats don't mean much when you're outnumbered. What's the plan? Victor asked, lighting a cigarette. Simple, Bradley replied. We pay a visit to his boy, make sure Daddy understands that his threats have consequences. Maybe break the other leg. Liam removed his headphones and turned to Gabriel, who was monitoring police frequencies. Any heat? Nothing. Police are focused on a domestic disturbance across town. We've got a clear operational space. Ben Davies finished checking his equipment, a combination of tactical gear and specialized electronics that would leave no trace. Thermal imaging shows 4 targets in the main warehouse. No one else in the surrounding buildings. Liam opened his gear bag and pulled out items that looked innocent but served deadly purposes. A small aerosol canister labeled industrial cleaner that contained a fast-acting paralytic agent. Zip ties that looked standard but were designed to tighten automatically with struggle, and a device that looked like a simple phone charger but could override electronic locks and disable security systems. Remember, Liam said, this isn't about killing them quickly. It's about making sure they understand the consequences of their choices. The 3 men approached the warehouse from different angles, communicating through encrypted earpieces. Liam entered through a maintenance door that Leo had unlocked remotely, while Gabriel and Ben took positions at alternate exits to prevent escape. Liam moved through the warehouse shadows with the patient precision of a predator. His years on oil rigs had taught him to work in dangerous conditions without making mistakes, a skill that translated surprisingly well to stalking human prey. He reached the main warehouse floor and positioned himself behind a stack of construction equipment, 30 feet from where Marcus and the Pinter brothers continued their planning session. How do we even know this guy is coming back to town? Alex Pinter asked. He said he was bringing help, Marcus replied. The kind that makes people disappear. Probably some mercenary buddies from his oil rig days. Let them come, Bradley said. We'll be ready. Liam smiled in the darkness. They were so focused on preparing for an expected threat that they had completely missed the one already among them. He activated the aerosol device and released its contents into the warehouse's ventilation system. The paralytic agent was odorless and colorless and would take effect gradually, first causing disorientation, then muscle weakness, and finally temporary paralysis. Within minutes, Marcus began rubbing his eyes. Something's wrong with the air in here. Feels heavy. Bradley Pinter tried to stand but stumbled slightly. Yeah, I'm feeling it too. Maybe there's a gas leak. But it was too late. One by one, they collapsed. First Alex, then Victor, then Marcus, and finally Bradley. They were not unconscious, but completely unable to move, their minds fully aware while their bodies betrayed them. Liam stepped out of the shadows, activating a portable floodlight that illuminated the 4 men lying helplessly on the warehouse floor. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. "Thank you for gathering in one convenient location." Marcus's eyes widened with terror as he recognized Liam. Liam knelt beside him, checking that the paralytic had taken full effect. "You're probably wondering what comes next," Liam continued, pulling on latex gloves. "The good news is that the paralytic agent is temporary. You'll regain full mobility in about 6 hours. The bad news is what happens during those 6 hours." Liam walked to each man in turn, securing them with specialized zip ties and checking their identification. Bradley Pinter's wallet was filled with fake IDs and credit cards, confirming Liam's suspicion that the family's criminal activities went deeper than simple intimidation. "Here's what's going to happen," Liam said, sitting on a crate so he could address all 4 men simultaneously. "You're going to lie here for the next few hours and think about your life choices. Specifically, you're going to think about what happens to people who hurt children." He pulled out his phone and began taking photographs. Their faces, their IDs, the license plates from their truck in the parking lot. These images are going to digital dead drops around the world. If anything happens to me, they'll be distributed to every law enforcement agency, rival criminal organization, and interested party in your operational area. Liam stood and walked to a tool bench, returning with a heavy wrench. "But that's just insurance. The real lesson starts now." What happened next took exactly 47 minutes. Liam worked with the methodical precision of a master craftsman, making sure each man understood precisely why he was being punished and what would happen if they ever threatened his family again. When he was finished, all 4 men were still alive, still conscious, but they were fundamentally changed. They would carry the physical and psychological scars of this encounter for the rest of their lives. Constant reminders that Liam Carter was not a man who forgave or forgot. Liam collected his equipment and walked toward the warehouse exit. Behind him, 4 men who had terrorized others for decades now understood what true terror felt like. "Gentlemen," Liam called over his shoulder, "if you ever see my son, my ex-wife, or me again, I suggest you remember this conversation." The warehouse door closed behind him with a final, echoing bang. Liam sat in his rental car outside Jack's school, watching his son hobble through the hallways on crutches. It had been 48 hours since the warehouse, and the psychological effects were already rippling through Marcus and Elena's world like cracks in a dam. Liam's phone buzzed with a text from Leo Abbott. "Marcus hasn't left the house since yesterday. Multiple calls to hospitals, police, lawyers. Elena is making arrangements to visit her sister in Portland." Liam smiled grimly. They were running scared exactly as planned. But running wasn't enough for what they had done to Jack. Gabriel appeared in the passenger seat, moving with the silent efficiency that made him perfect for this kind of work. Update from the Pinter family. Bradley's in hiding. His brothers are talking to anyone who will listen about leaving town for good. Word is they've told their associates that Liam Carter is off limits forever. "Good," Liam said. "But there's still Elena and Marcus. They think geography will save them. It won't." Liam's expression darkened. "Geography is just another puzzle to solve. What matters is making sure they understand that betraying family has permanent consequences." Through the school's windows, Liam watched Jack struggle to open his locker while balancing on his crutches. Other students gave him space, but Liam could see the shame in his son's posture, the humiliation of being broken by a man he had refused to call dad. "I want to see him," Liam said quietly. "Not advisable," Gabriel replied. "Marcus and Elena probably have lawyers watching for parental kidnapping charges. It's better to wait until this is finished." Liam knew Gabriel was right, but the distance from his son felt like a physical wound. 3 years of forced separation, 3 years of watching Marcus poison the relationship, 3 years of legal threats and custody restrictions. All of that ended now. "Tell me about Elena's sister," Liam said. Gabriel consulted his tablet. "Victoria Jefferson lives in Portland with her husband, George Larson. They run a small restaurant called Jefferson's Kitchen. No kids, no criminal connections. Probably don't even know the real reason for Elena's visit. Perfect cover for someone trying to disappear," Liam mused. "Elena thinks she can hide behind family. She'll claim she's protecting Jack from the dangerous ex-husband. The legal angle. She's building a case for an emergency custody modification, Gabriel confirmed. Marcus is telling everyone you threatened him with violence and that you're unpredictable and dangerous. They'll claim Jack needs protection. Liam processed this with the same methodical approach he used for complex oil rig operations. Every system had weak points. Every plan had vulnerabilities. The key was to find the pressure points and apply force precisely where it would do the most damage. Leo, Liam said into his phone, I need comprehensive surveillance on Elena and Marcus. Phone calls, emails, financial transactions, travel arrangements, everything. Already in progress, Leo replied. Elena has been researching domestic violence shelters and emergency protection orders. Marcus has been calling lawyers about restraining orders and criminal threat charges. Time frame. They're planning to leave tomorrow morning. Marcus is staying behind to handle the situation, while Elena takes Jack to Portland for his safety. Liam felt the familiar calm that came before decisive action. Perfect. Gabriel. I need transportation to Portland and full operational support. Done. Ben's already en route to establish surveillance on the Jefferson house. Liam watched Jack disappear into his classroom, then started the car. Phase 1 had been about establishing dominance over Marcus and his criminal associates. Phase 2 was about ensuring Elena understood the consequences of enabling child abuse. But Phase 3 was about making sure his son never had to live in fear again. Liam's phone rang. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize, but Gabriel's equipment identified it immediately. Elena Shaw calling from a burner phone. Liam answered. Hello, Elena. Her voice was tight with fear and anger. Liam, I don't know what you did to Marcus, but he's terrified. He won't tell me what happened, but he keeps talking about leaving town. Maybe Marcus finally met someone who doesn't tolerate men who break children's bones, Liam replied. Liam, you can't just threaten people and expect. Elena, Liam interrupted, his voice dropping to the same quiet tone that had terrified Marcus. I want you to listen very carefully. Marcus broke our son's leg because Jack refused to call him dad. You watched it happen and called it a soccer injury. There was silence on the line. I'm not threatening anyone, Elena. I'm correcting a problem. Marcus learned that some actions have consequences. Now it's your turn to learn the same lesson. What do you want? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I want you to understand that enabling someone who hurts Jack makes you just as guilty as Marcus. I want you to understand that running to Portland won't protect you from the choices you've made. Liam could hear her breathing accelerate. How do you know about Portland? I know everything, Elena. I know about Victoria's restaurant, about George's motorcycle, about the guest room where you think you'll be safe. I know about the lawyers you've called and the stories you're planning to tell. Liam, please. You made a choice when you watched Marcus break our son's leg and did nothing. Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. Liam ended the call and pulled out of the school parking lot. In his rearview mirror, he could see the building where his son sat in class, probably wondering if his father would ever come home. Liam would come home, but first he had promises to keep. Portland's Jefferson district bustled with afternoon traffic as Liam sat in a coffee shop across from Jefferson's kitchen, watching Elena help their son out of a rented Toyota Camry. Jack moved carefully on his crutches, still favoring his injured leg while Elena carried their luggage with the nervous efficiency of someone convinced they were being pursued. They were right to be nervous. Liam sipped his coffee and observed his targets through the restaurant's windows. Victoria Jefferson embraced her sister warmly, while George Larson helped Jack to a chair with genuine concern. These were good people who had no idea they were now harboring someone who had enabled child abuse. Liam's phone buzzed with a message from Ben Davies. Perimeter secured. No sign of Marcus or law enforcement. Elena has been making calls to family attorneys in Portland. Liam typed back. Let her. She's building her own trap. Through his earpiece, Leo Abbott provided real-time intelligence. Elena just called her lawyer in Houston. Quote, Liam's completely lost it. He threatened Marcus so badly that Marcus won't even leave the house. I think he might try to take Jack by force. End quote. Liam smiled coldly. Elena was constructing a narrative where she was the protective mother and Liam was the dangerous ex-husband. It was a compelling story that would play well in family court if she lived long enough to tell it. But Liam had learned something important during his years on oil rigs. The most dangerous situations were often the ones where people thought they were safe. Liam left the coffee shop and walked 2 blocks to a hardware store where he purchased items that appeared completely innocent but would serve specific purposes in the hours ahead. Cable ties, industrial adhesive, electrical components, and a small propane torch. These were tools any contractor might need for a routine job. By the time he returned to his surveillance position, Elena had settled into Jefferson's kitchen as if she belonged there. Through the windows, Liam could see her helping with dinner service while Jack sat at a corner table doing homework, his broken leg propped on a chair. Liam's heart ached at the sight of his son. Jack looked older, as if Marcus's violence had stolen something fundamental from his childhood. The easy smile Liam remembered was gone, replaced by the watchful weariness of someone who had learned that safety was an illusion. That was going to change. At 11 p.m., Jefferson's kitchen closed for the night. Liam watched the family retire to the apartment above the restaurant. Victoria and George went to their bedroom, while Elena and Jack went to the guest room, which opened onto a fire escape. Liam gave them an hour to fall asleep, then began his approach. The fire escape was old but well-maintained, with steps that barely creaked under Liam's weight. His years on oil rigs had taught him to move silently in dangerous environments, a skill that served him well now. The guest room window was unlocked, a small oversight that would prove costly. Liam slipped inside like a shadow, moving past Jack's sleeping form to where Elena lay on a pull-out couch. She woke to a gloved hand over her mouth and Liam's face inches from hers in the darkness. "Don't make a sound," he whispered. "You'll wake Jack, and I don't want him to see what comes next." Elena's eyes went wide with terror. Liam zip-tied her hands behind her back and guided her toward the window. "We're going to have a conversation, Elena. Just you and me." Liam led her down the fire escape to an alley behind the restaurant where Gabriel waited with a van. Within minutes, they were driving toward the industrial district. Elena was secured in the back while Liam sat beside her. "Liam, please," she whispered. "Jack needs his mother." "Jack needed his mother 3 nights ago when Marcus broke his leg," Liam replied. "Where was she then?" Elena began to cry. Not the manipulative tears she had used during their divorce, but the raw terror of someone who had finally realized the magnitude of their mistake. The van stopped at an abandoned warehouse that Gabriel had prepared earlier. Inside, a single chair sat under a harsh floodlight, surrounded by shadows that seemed to swallow sound. Liam secured Elena to the chair and activated a video camera. "This is being recorded, Elena. Your confession will ensure that if anything happens to me, the truth about what you did to Jack will become public knowledge." "I didn't do anything," she protested. "Marcus was the one." "You watched," Liam said, his voice cutting through her excuses like a blade. "You watched a grown man break a 15-year-old boy's leg, and then you helped cover it up by calling it a soccer injury." Liam walked to a table where he had arranged his tools, the innocent hardware store purchases that would now serve a much more specific purpose. "You have 2 choices, Elena. You can confess what really happened that night, help me get custody of Jack, and disappear from our lives forever." Liam picked up the propane torch and ignited it. The blue flame cast dancing shadows on the warehouse walls. "Or you can stick to your lies, and I'll make sure you understand exactly what Jack felt when Marcus broke his bones." Elena stared at the flame, then at Liam's face, and saw something that made her blood turn to ice. This wasn't the man she had married 15 years ago. This wasn't even the bitter ex-husband she had divorced 3 years ago. This was someone who had been pushed past every limit and had decided that the traditional rules no longer applied. "What do you want me to say?" she whispered. Liam turned off the torch and sat across from her. "I want you to tell the truth about what Marcus did to Jack. I want you to admit that you enabled it. And I want you to sign custody papers that give me full parental rights. And if I do that?" Liam's smile was colder than a winter wind. "Then you get to keep breathing. You get to disappear somewhere far away and start a new life, knowing that if you ever contact Jack or me again, this conversation will continue where we left off." Elena looked around the warehouse at the video camera, at the tools on the table, and at the man she had thought she could manipulate and control. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do whatever you want." Liam reactivated the camera. "Then let's begin. Start with the night Marcus broke Jack's leg, and don't leave out any details." As Elena began her confession, Liam felt a cold satisfaction settle over him. Justice was a concept that courts and lawyers debated endlessly, but sometimes it required more direct intervention. Sometimes it required a father who refused to accept that anyone could hurt his child without consequences. Thanks for listening. This story isn't over yet, and things are about to get even more intense. Stay tuned for the next part to see what happens next.